I want to start off by saying I will not be critiquing the gameplay of a game I have not yet played. Also, in an effort to prevent getting this video blackballed by YouTube, I'm going to start on some more positive topics. While rumors of nerfed psychopaths and other changes do remain concerning, I want to focus mainly on remake culture and censorship. Gameplay criticism can and probably will come once I've gone hands-on with the game, assuming that I ever do. I'm generally fond of the graphical updates to DRDR, even if the title is a bit unwieldy. The original definitely suffers from certain 7th gen aspects, particularly lighting, and has not aged as gracefully as some later games from the same generation. By and large, I also think the new voice actors sound alright. I personally really love Otis's voice. He sounds funky, and I dig it.
You ain't planning on going back down into the mall, are you?
結構ね、落ち着いた声で安心できるような感じがしますね。
Never listen to me.
But this new guy is not Frank West. To use a meme from the Dead Rising 5 days, this is Hank East. He looks and sounds nothing like Frank did, and this is no small issue for me either. This is a complete deal breaker in my mind. Frank West is one of the most iconic characters from the entire 7th generation of gaming. In less than a decade, the man became enough of an icon to replace Mega Man and to rival Ryu from Streets. He was so iconic that to this day I see fans of the series miscredit him with stuff that Chuck Green invented in the sequel. This new guy just does not carry the same energy forward, and as he is the vessel through whom we experience the entire game, everything around him suffers for it. Oh, I almost forgot. You can experience Frank West's iconic outfit as pre-order DLC. Okay. This isn't about bad DLC practices, so let's get on to the real meat of the subject. Censorship is bad. One could argue that erotica points are simply no longer socially acceptable, but removing them from a remaster of an old game is to pretend that they never were acceptable, even in 2005. It erases a very real thing, turning a definite mistake, if one agrees to call it a mistake in the first place, into an unreal thing, creating an imaginary, hypothetical attitude of a past that did not in actuality exist. I believe censorship is also bad from the perspective of a creator, as we must expose ourselves to error, to bad takes, and to the risk of mishandling sensitive subjects to improve our own ability to handle them correctly. As consumers, we must also confront the parts of our media that we dislike or that make us uncomfortable, to understand why they do and to better understand our own tastes. Even if the creator agrees that what they made was an error, or that they mishandled some element of it, the original must be allowed to exist, because in censoring it, we collectively pretend it never happened. In effect, it is the same ego-driven fallacy as pretending we cannot make a mistake. Perhaps it is worse, as in censoring our old works, we are actively taking steps to make the illusion seem true. Then there are the changes to Cliff Hudson's introductory dialogue and the ironic cultural attitudes that they reflect. I'll let the changes speak for themselves first.
You can't tell me, can you, fella? Oh yeah, I know why. It's because you're Viet Cong. I'm right, aren't I? You are nothing but a filthy communist!
Tell me, can you, fella? Oh yeah, I know why. It's because you're a mole. I'm right, aren't I? You are nothing but a filthy animal!
Firstly, the original does a fantastic job of explaining why Frank can't possibly reason with Cliff, and it sets the stage for a violent boss fight. The man is so divorced from reality he thinks 6'3" Frank West is a Viet Cong soldier. Furthermore, Cliff being specifically a Vietnam veteran is a very deliberate choice by the original writer. Remember that the game's entire plot was started by the Santa Cabeza incident, by American soldiers on foreign soil massacring another nation's citizens. It is a deliberate callback to pop culture imagery of the Vietnam War. Not only that, but Cliff's specific references to communism are there to further highlight the game's anti-military and anti-capitalist themes. The research in Santa Cabeza happened because American beef consumption is unsustainable, and their response to a containment breach was excessive and brutal. The same brutality that they now intend to use against the survivors of Willamette, their own countrymen. Like taking a sledgehammer to a tower of Jenga blocks, by changing Cliff's dialogue, you irreparably damage the metatextual critique of American culture which is so core to the identity of Dead Rising as a series. As a history nerd, the other aspect of this change which I find deeply ironic is how it reflects America's own real-world relationship with the Vietnam War. To paraphrase popular fictional character John Rambo, when I came home, I didn't have anything. Vietnam is a very painful, humiliating memory that I believe America wants to forget, which leads to real men, like Cliff, never finding the help that they need and ending up in some very dark places. I can think of no finer metaphor for Dead Rising's America than Cliff Hudson, a man of outdated ideals, forced to do the unthinkable by an uncaring government, ultimately used up, abandoned, and unloved. Thankfully, his military background and general attitude are resurrected in the game's final boss, Brock Mason, so not all is lost, but I still believe this demonstrates how one little change can alter an entire story. In closing, I want to give a really quick shout out to Pocky Sal from speedruns.com for creating the Dead Rising time skip tool, which was really useful in gathering all the B-roll for this video, so I don't actually have to play through half the game just to fight Cliff. I want to thank everyone who actually watched all the way to the end of the video. It means a lot to me that you would even just hear me out. Hopefully I don't sound like a culture war lunatic, and hopefully I just sound like somebody who's interested in how this kind of censorship can impact an entire game and the premise of an entire series.